Hello and welcome to Film Study 100. I'll be your instructor, Dr. Sam Lackey, and I'm excited to get started. This is the introductory lecture. So today, in this first lecture, I'm just going to sort of provide a brief overview of the class. I want to talk a little bit about Web Campus. We'll talk about the syllabus, and I just want to give you guys an idea of what to expect in this class over the course of the semester. I'm going to review some pretty basic stuff that you might already be familiar with concerning Web Campus and just sort of our weekly routine. I'm assuming that this will be the first college class for some of us, or at least this might be our first semester of college classes. I know for others, we've had several classes. We've done plenty of other courses through GBC, so many of you are probably familiar with at least some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about here in the introductory lecture, but just bear with me. You might even, fast forward through a minute or two, but I'll keep it brief and I'll talk primarily about this class in particular and just sort of what we're going to be doing in here. And then we're going to have our regular week 1 lecture that's going to be posted on Tuesday of this week, and that's where we actually get into our normal, our regular week 1 material. So let's just go over a few things, just some really basic stuff that I want everybody to know. Most of you are probably familiar with Web Campus, our sort of online platform that we use, and obviously this is an online class, so that's where all of our material can be found in Web Campus in our weekly modules. So I would encourage you guys to go ahead and take a look at the week 1 module. It's already up, it's already posted. If you're watching this lecture, chances are you're already in the week 1 module, but just get into the habit of checking out the weekly modules at the beginning of each week. They're always going to be published first thing Monday morning. So that's really when the week begins for us. If you've ever taken me for a class previously, or again, if you've taken other college classes through GBC, you're probably familiar more or less with this type of a schedule. We get started first thing Monday. I only post the modules 1 week at a time, but there's always going to be a lot of stuff to look at. My lectures are always going to be there. The assigned readings for the week will always be posted there. I'll always tell you what to read. And the movies that we are watching will also be announced, and in some cases they might be posted. So when I can find links and give you guys an opportunity to watch some of these movies for free, I will definitely do that. I've done that here in week 1, so if you look at the week 1 module, you should find links for all of the films that we are watching this week. We're watching multiple films this week. We normally don't do that, but we're starting at the very beginning of cinema. So a lot of these early films are quite short, so we're going to watch several. Once we get to feature-length movies, we will typically just watch 1 per week. And then there'll be a few instances where I give you an option. You can watch one or another one, depending on your preference. But here in week 1, we're going to watch several. They're all short, so it won't take you very long to get through them. But like I said, I'll try to help you guys out with links to the movies when I can. But it's really your responsibility to watch these movies, to find them. I'll usually tell you where they are. If I can't provide a link, I'll at least tell you where you can access them. A lot of these can be found or at least rented or purchased on YouTube. That's where I have found most of them. It does help if you have a YouTube account. In many cases, they're free. And you can just watch them for free on YouTube. In other cases, you might need to rent them, and you might even want to purchase them. They're usually not very expensive, but if you really want to go the cheaper route, you can rent. A lot of times renting might only cost you like $3 or $4, and you'll have access to the movie for like a 48-hour period. So we'll talk more about this as the semester goes on, but typically you guys should be able to find these movies pretty easily. I know you're pretty savvy with internet searching, so just go to the platforms or the services that you have. If you have an Amazon account, some of these will be available on Amazon, but like I said, a lot of them are available through YouTube, so you shouldn't have trouble finding them, and when they're free and I can just link you to them like this week, I will do so. So the movies will often be in the modules, everything you need for the week, any pertinent documents that I want you to look at will be posted there. Again, my lectures will always be posted there, and also any written assignments that are due. We have weekly discussion posts in this class, so those are always going to be posted in the weekly modules. You can open those assignments up, read the prompt, and then you just need to get them completed by the end of the week. Any assignment that's due during a week is going to be due at the end of the week, which means, Sunday night for us. So a week begins Monday morning when I publish the module, and then it ends Sunday night before midnight. That's when our work is going to be due. So you have the full week to watch my lecture, consume all of the other content that I've put in that week's module, complete your discussion post, complete the reading for that week, and also, of course, view the movie. So I've tried to be reasonable about the reading load because I do want you to watch at least one movie each week, at least until the very end of the semester when we turn our attention strictly to the final paper. So it is a fair amount of work, but most of the reading assignments are short. Make sure you have the book. If you don't have it as you're watching this lecture, you need to get it as soon as possible. I might be able to help some of you out here in week 1 finding PDFs of the readings, but I will not be able to do that throughout the semester. So you need the book. It's in the syllabus. I tell you about it in the week 1 module, but here it is. It's called the Oxford History of Cinema. History of World Cinema. It's a big book. We're not going to read the entire thing, but it's a really useful resource. We're going to read several of the chapters. Again, they're often quite short. The book is sort of divided up into sections. It's really put together in chronological order. So we're starting at the very beginning of cinematic history, the invention of motion pictures, the early development of the art form. So we're going to read a couple of short pieces from the first chapter. These chapters are long. So the first section 1, is silent cinema. And then the first chapter of that larger section is called the early years. And within that very big chapter, there's a couple of specific articles or pieces. We're typically just going to read some of those shorter articles. We're not usually going to tackle entire chapters. In some cases, we might, but I do try to keep the readings relatively brief. So this week, we're just reading the first 2 parts of the early years. So that means origins and survival. That article starts on page 6, and then early cinema. That starts on page 13. So we're just reading those 2 pieces here in week 1, and I would like you to talk about them a little bit in our first week's discussion. And we're also watching those short films that I've posted in the week 1 module. And typically our discussion posts are going to ask us to talk about the movie that we watched and the readings that we did from the book. So I'll have a few prompts for you that are related to those topics, and you guys can write sort of informally in those posts, but I still want you to edit your work, put some thought into your responses, and you can also view the responses of your classmates. That's not an invitation to copy their stuff. I just want you guys to be able to talk to each other. You can respond to each other. And in many cases, your classmates are going to make some good observations some stuff that maybe you didn't think about or didn't notice, and that can be part of your, larger learning process. So we'll do those almost every week. If there's a larger assignment due, like one of our papers, I'll give you a break from the discussion board. But typically we will have a discussion post each week, and they're always due at the end of the week. So you can really manage your time as best you can, whatever works best for you. Figure out a routine. I would recommend doing a lot of the work before watching my lecture. Like, I would go ahead and tackle the readings and watch the movie and then watch my lecture. Because in some cases, I'll be perhaps providing spoilers for some of these movies. I'll be talking about the ending in some cases. So you don't want to watch the lecture before you've seen the movie, because then a lot of what I'm talking about isn't really going to resonate or make a lot of sense because you haven't seen the movie. So once you've looked at that week's module and you've kind of reviewed everything that we're doing for the week, I would just get started on your workload. Complete the reading, watch the movie, do your discussion post, and then you can maybe watch my lecture a little bit later in the week. And honestly, you can do the post later in the week, because you need to complete the reading and the movie viewing first, because again, you need to have that stuff done in order to complete the discussion post. So writing your discussion post and watching my lecture can often be sort of the final things that you do that week. You might want to do the lecture first and then the discussion, as long as it's in by midnight on Sunday. So you always have a full week to get through everything that we're doing that week. So if you have questions, or if you're ever in a bind, if you're in a situation where you're not going to be able to submit your discussion post on time, or maybe you're just swamped some week, or you're sick, family emergency, something has come up and you're not going to be able to watch the movie, or you're not going to be able to complete the work for whatever reason, just let me know. In an online class, it's important that we email each other whenever we have questions, or whenever you need to tell me something. If you're going to miss some time, if you're going to be away from class for a while, just keep me posted, keep me informed. I can always help you get caught up. We can always schedule a video conference through Zoom if you have questions, or if you're struggling with an assignment. Just reach out. Don't hesitate to email me. I check my email every day during the semester. On the weekends, it's a little bit more spotty, but if you email me between Monday and Friday, I'll always get back to you within 24 hours. And if you email me late on Friday, I'll at least get back to you by the following Monday. And if you are going to be late on something, just tell me before the deadline occurs. I'm usually very flexible and willing to grant extensions, but you need to ask for one before the due date, not after. And we can always talk and meet. Like I said, just reach out and contact me. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the class in particular. One other thing you should take a look at in the week 1 module is the course syllabus. Now, the syllabus will not appear in every single week's module, but it is there in the week 1 module, and you can also find it simply by clicking on syllabus in that little left-hand menu that you should have when you're in Canvas or when you're in Web Campus. So take a look at the syllabus. You don't have to read it word for word, but my policies are in there. The assignments are in there. Also my contact info, my email address. I also have an office phone number, but email will be the best way to communicate. So all that info can be found in the syllabus. You can see my grading scale, how many points all the assignments are worth. But the most important thing to look at is the class schedule. That appears towards the end of the syllabus. It makes up the last couple of pages of the document. You really should hang on to that, maybe save that, or at least, you could just go ahead and save the syllabus entirely, download it, keep it handy on your computer so you can pull up that class schedule. As I mentioned, I only post the modules in Web Campus 1 week at a time. But if you want to see the entire class schedule, If you want to see everything that we are doing between now and May, you can look at the detailed schedule in the syllabus. So I tell you all, I give you all of the reading assignments, all of the movies that we're watching, all of the assignments, and also just sort of what we're doing on a week-to-week basis. So you can see I've broken up the class in sort of a similar structure. I've used the same chronology that we see in the book. We are going from the very beginning of cinema up to the modern day. So we're kind of following the book, but we will eventually leave the book because it stops in the 90s, and I like to get a little more contemporary. And also, as you can imagine, with a book this size, we can't read it all. So we're not reading all the chapters. Don't be alarmed, okay? We're only reading bits and pieces. But if you guys are really interested, you should keep the book and you can read more of it later on your own time. So take a look at the syllabus. If you have any questions about anything that you see in that document, just let me know. But it is good to keep the course schedule handy. Again, you might not want to keep all of it on your desktop necessarily, but keep the schedule handy, especially if you're going to miss time, if you're wanting to work ahead, if you want to get some stuff done in advance, if you want to watch some of the movies in advance. One thing you guys might want to do here in week 1, when the workload is still kind of light, you might want to go ahead and just get all of the movies. Again, they're all in the syllabus. They're all listed, okay, in the schedule. And I can also provide those in another format if anybody wants me to. But you might want to go ahead and find all of them, purchase all of them or rent them, see which ones are free, see which ones you might need to pay money for. And if you have any questions or if you're having any difficulty accessing the films, let me know. But you can also just go week to week. Like I said, the week 1 films are already available. The week 2 film is also free. I can get it for you for free. I can link you to it on YouTube. So you might just want to, wake up each Monday morning, see what film we're watching, and if I don't have a link to it, you can just go and buy it or rent it early in the week when you're ready to watch it. It's totally up to you, just whatever you want to do, but please get in touch with me if you have questions or concerns. All right, so the only other thing I really wanted to discuss here in the introductory lecture was just I wanted to give you a general impression of what the class is going to be and what kind of work we're doing. And I just wanted to talk about film studies in general, just sort of what it is as a discipline and how we can approach it. So one thing you'll notice, a final thing to say about the week 1 module is there's a document called Film Terms Glossary or something like that. I can't quite remember what I called it. Film Vocab Glossary, something glossary. It's a Word doc. I want you guys to take a look at that. I would really recommend that you guys download or save that document. Even if you don't do it with the syllabus, you should do it with the glossary because there's just a bunch of basic info in there that I want you guys to know. You don't need to be film experts. That's what I wanted to sort of get into here at the end of towards the end of this introductory lecture. We're not film scholars. We are not film study majors, at least not yet, though some of you might become that at some point if you pursue education sort of beyond GBC. We don't offer a major in that, but it is an academic discipline. Film study is an academic discipline. You can get an undergraduate degree in it. You can get graduate degrees in it. People teach it at the college level. I'm obviously teaching it right now. You guys probably know that I'm an English professor here at GBC, but I did get a bachelor's degree in film study many, many years ago, back when I was in college. So I have a background in it, but I did most of my graduate work in literature, in English. But at bigger schools where there's actually a film studies department, you will have faculty there who got all of their degrees in film studies. And that's what they do. That's their field of scholarship. So just like any other academic discipline, there is a specific vocabulary that goes along with film study. There are just certain concepts, certain terms that you need to know when you are going to take a film study class. So that's what I've provided in that glossary. It's just a list of like definitions, just some words, some terminology that you guys need to know. Some of it is just like basic occupations or positions within the film industry. Like, you need to know who a director is. You need to know about screenwriters and cinematographers in many cases, maybe producers. These are just basic job titles that are really important. It's kind of like knowing the musician if you're talking about a song. It's like knowing who the author is if you're talking about a book. Right? You need to know some of these people. You need to know what they're doing. And then I've also provided some terminology about what we might consider like the technical side of movies. Because we all know that movies have a lot in common with novels or short stories. You know, they're narratives. There's a lot of elements that we already recognize in movies if we've ever taken an English class, for example. We can recognize narrative. We can recognize plots. We can recognize characters. We can recognize other literary elements or devices like symbolism or theme. You know, most movies, like most books, have a theme, some larger idea or message that they're trying to get across, some larger meaning that the audience is trying to pick up on. So we can recognize all of those things in movies. They operate in a very similar way to how they operate in a novel or a short story. But we have to remember that movies are a different medium, right? It is more of a visual medium compared to, literature. So there's technical stuff. There are technical sides that we need to at least be acquainted with. Again, we don't need to be experts. We don't need to know everything there is to know about movies, but we need to know a little bit of the technical vocabulary. We need to know, what cinematography is. We need to know what mise-en-scene is. We need to know what a production designer does, because that's going to be stuff that we ultimately will be analyzing later on. Because just like we can analyze a novel or a short story, we can analyze a movie. And that's really going to be the way I approach it, because again, I am a literature an English professor. That's my background. That's my training, largely, at least at the graduate level. So that's how I'm going to really teach the class. We're going to analyze these movies just like we would analyze a novel in one of my lit classes. It's not that different, but the difference that we do notice comes from the technical side of movie making. So there's just a few additional things that we can get into when we talk about a movie. We can talk about lighting. We can talk about music. We can talk about costumes. We can talk about hair and makeup. We can talk about actors and the roles that they are playing. There's just a lot of options that go along with the traditional sort of literary options that I've already mentioned, like theme, characters, plot, setting, symbolism. That stuff's all fair game too, but we should at least play around a little bit with some specific cinematic elements. Stuff that's really specific to motion pictures that we wouldn't necessarily see in other art forms, like a painting or a novel or a song. Okay, so that's why I posted the glossary in week 1. I'm not really going to spend a ton of time going through each and every concept or element on that list in that document. I just want you guys to sort of go through it yourself. And if you have questions, let me know. I'm going to talk about a lot of that stuff throughout the semester as we discuss individual films. So I might talk about the camera work. I might talk about lighting. I might talk a little bit about set design. I might talk about specific actors. We're going to talk about individual directors and screenwriters. Sometimes they're the same person. Sometimes they're separate. And also in your readings, in the book, You're going to learn a lot about individual directors or maybe individual actors. They have some cutouts in each chapter where you can learn a little bit more about Greta Garbo or, some other noteworthy figure from the period that they are covering in that particular chapter. So you just need to be familiar with those terms. I'll talk about them a little bit more in the week 1 lecture. And again, I'll talk about them throughout the semester as we're discussing specific films. So you need to have a little bit of that vocabulary in your back pocket. I don't expect you to memorize everything. That's why it would be a good idea to save that glossary document, download it, keep it handy, so you can use it throughout the semester. And the final thing I'll say, and you probably have already observed this just by looking at the book, and if you look through the syllabus and the course schedule, you'll certainly notice this. The way I'm structuring this class, it really is sort of a film history class. And film history is a very important part of the larger discipline of film study. A lot of what we do within film study is to sort of conduct history, go back and study the history of film, the development of film, individual films from different historical periods. Just like when we do literary study, we're often going to be sort of looking at older texts, thinking about the history of different literary forms, different reading habits, how things change over time. Again, a lot of that work is very similar in the world of film. We're just doing it with movies instead of books or poems or plays. So I will approach it from that sort of English background. We are doing some history. We're going to be learning a lot of history. But when we watch the movies, it's fine to talk a little bit about historical context and, kind of use some of the information you pick up in the book or from my lectures. But I really want us to analyze these movies. I don't just want us to talk about, I like that one. I didn't really like this other one. This one, I guess, was pretty important because it was innovative in some way, or it was the first example of blank. That's fine. You can talk about that stuff. Sometimes you should talk about that stuff. But ultimately, I want you to analyze these films on your own. I want you to come up with your own interpretations, your own understanding of what the films are doing, what the films mean, why the films are significant, and what the films are saying to us or what we can say about the films. That still needs to be original, and we can do that kind of analysis with movies. Even though they're often viewed primarily as entertainment, we can study them as serious works of art, and that's what we're doing in this class. Just like we would study a novel or a poem or a play or some classical painting. We can regard movies the same way. They have meaning. We're trying to uncover the meaning, and we're trying to provide original interpretations based on what we see, what we think, and what we feel. So those discussion posts that we do each week will be a great chance to sort of jumpstart your analysis. They're going to be largely opinion-based, right? They're largely about responding to the movies and the readings. What do you think? How did you feel about that movie? What are your sort of takes on it? And then later on, when we're writing papers, we can take those early responses, we can polish them up and turn them into more in-depth analysis by looking at specific examples, by maybe conducting a little bit of outside research, by pushing our ideas further. And that will come a little later in the semester. So, we'll talk more about that as we go along. But again, the discussion posts are a chance to respond, get your ideas on paper, talk to your classmates, start spitballing some ideas, get the ball rolling. But later, we're going to do higher level analysis that goes beyond, I think it was pretty crazy when he did that, or I really liked this movie. That's a great place to start. But we're going to end up with much more detailed, specific analysis. And that's the goal in my English classes. That's the goal here in this class as well. Okay, so we'll go ahead and stop the introductory lecture there. If you have any questions about anything I've said or anything you see in the week 1 module, please let me know. And please come back to Web Campus to watch the week 1 lecture. It'll be up by Tuesday night. If you don't see it by Tuesday night, please let me know. So I'll see you soon.